Today I'm sharing 10 recently purchased books that I am so excited to read this spring season. Hello Bookworm, I'm Hannah Greendale, and making this video has me even more hyped for these books, which I've divided into 5 categories. The first one is Who's Telling This Story? These are books with unusual narrators. First up is Jacob's Folly by Rebecca Miller. Now this story opens in 18th century Paris and follows a Jewish man who encounters a disaster, then wakes up 200 years later reincarnated as a fly who narrates the story. Now, as a fly, he lives in the Long Island suburbs of 21st century America, where his tiny presence affects the lives of a volunteer fireman and a young Orthodox Jewish woman with a secret ambition. I've read only one book before told from the perspective of a fly, and that was Fly on the Wall by E. Lockhart. And it was interesting how the narrative perspective could either limit or be used to enhance the story. So I'm curious to see what Miller will do with a fly narrator in this book. My other unusual narrator book is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, which was recommended by a viewer. Now, this story recounts a widow's unlikely connection with a giant Pacific octopus. Her husband has died, her 18-year-old son mysteriously disappeared 30 years ago, and now she works the night shift at an aquarium where she meets an old curmudgeon octopus named Marcellus, who happens to be the narrator of this book. The last great book I read on octopuses was nonfiction. That was The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery, a wonderful book that taught me how intelligent and strong octopuses are. For example, a giant Pacific octopus could drown you in a small fish tank if it wanted to. They're that strong. So here I will confess that I have been terrified of octopuses my entire life. I've always seen them as the giant jelly spiders of the sea, so the big question here is, can this author convince me to sympathize with something I find so terrifying? I'm always interested in reading books with unusual narrators, so if you have any recommendations, please share them with me in the comments. The next category is Of Mice and Myths. These are books in the realm of fantasy, mythology, and folklore, beginning with Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott, in which the Yaga siblings have been estranged since childhood, but are reunited when they receive a mysterious inheritance that is not land or money as they expect, but rather a sentient house on chicken legs called Thistlefoot. As the Yaga siblings embark on a cross-country theater tour with Thistlefoot, they are pursued by a sinister figure known as the Long Shadow Man and the house's original inhabitant, Baba Yaga. This is said to be a sweeping adventure illuminated by Jewish folklore and adorned with lyrical prose as tantalizing as sweet briar berries. It's an immersive modern fantasy that I cannot wait to read. Next is the essential Peter S. Beagle Volume 1 of 2. This is an illustrated collection of short stories that range from an aging academic befriending a mythical beast to a brave young mouse who questions his identity and, quote, redefines feline wiles. I'm very curious to see how that one plays out. I'm a big fan of Beagle's work. In fact, I recently read an arc of his upcoming book, I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons, kindly sent to me by Saga Press. It blends darkness and whimsy in the story of a reluctant dragon exterminator and a brave princess on their quest to defeat a powerful opponent who's threatening the kingdom. I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy this book. My final book in this category is Herc by Phoenicia Rogerson, a queer retelling of the story of Hercules as told through the people who knew him, like his wives, lovers, rivals, and so forth. I'm actually reading this one now and loving it. My only complaint about this book is that it's a debut because I already get the sense that I'm going to want to read more from this author. This next category is Strange Things Afoot, because at the heart of these stories is a mystery. First up is On the Savage Side by Tiffany McDaniel, which tells the story of twin sisters who are reminded of their family's generational trauma when a local woman is discovered drowned in a river followed by the discovery of more bodies. This is described as a fearless elegy for missing women everywhere, and it's inspired by the real-life unsolved murders of the Chillicothe 6 in Ohio. Tiffany McDaniel's debut novel featured in my Best Books of 2023 video. If you are not reading her work, you are missing out on extraordinary literary fiction with magical realism. The other book in this category is The Extinction of Irina Ray by Jennifer Croft, which follows 8 translators who venture to the forest and arrive at a house that belongs to the writer, Irina Ray, who mysteriously goes missing just days after they arrive. Now, while they work on translating Irina's magnum opus, they also explore the ancient forest in search of clues in hopes of finding her. This has been one of my most anticipated reads of 2024 since I learned of it months before its publication. Early reviews are mixed, so I'm tempering my expectations for this one. Now we get to the Woo Me with Words category, featuring 2 books with sumptuous prose. First up is When I Sing Mountains Dance by Irina Salah, translated from the Catalan by Mara Fay Letham. This book opens with a man being struck by lightning while picking black chanterelles. The ghosts of 17th century witches then gather around him to collect the mushrooms before setting off in a story that's said to be as much about the mountains and the mushrooms as it is about the human dramas that unfold in their midst. I'm very grateful to Kim at Middle of the Book March for bringing this one to my attention. Thanks, Kim. The second book in this category takes the prize for worst cover ever, with the most unreadable font, but it sounds amazing. This is The Vintner's Luck by Elizabeth Knox, and it was first published in 1998. This is the story of a man in the early 19th century who is filled with wine and love sorrows as he stumbles through his family's vineyard, where he drunkenly swoons and is caught by a male angel who's said to be a favorite of both God and Satan. Over time, the protagonist falls passionately in love with the angel in a relationship that complicates both of their lives. Despite this book having a heinous cover, I have to say that out of all the books featured in this video, this is the one that I'm most curious about because it sounds so unusual. The final category is The Odd One Out, featuring the only work of nonfiction on this list, Cassandra Speaks by Elizabeth Lesser. This book looks at mythology and religious parables, as well as literature, films, and fairy tales written by men, and examines how these myths and parables would affect our lives differently if they'd been written by women. It's said to be a mix of storytelling, memoir, and cultural observations. Nonfiction has been among the highlights of my reading year so far, thanks to the Women's Prize for Nonfiction long list. I posted a review video with recommendations you should definitely watch if you're in the market for some stellar nonfiction reads. If this were your stack of 10 books, which one would you read first? Let me know in the comments with the code word peach in reference to my shirt, because I don't know if I can get away with this color, but I wore it anyway. Feel free to let me know. Thank you so much for being here today to share in my excitement about new books. I wish you happy reading, and I'll see you in the next one.